My hands were shaking when the alien ambassador slid the document across the crystal table toward me. 30 days. That was all my species had left before 200 warships would arrive at Earth to pacify what they called our hostile and primitive world. My name is Laura Bennett, and I was the only human allowed inside the Grand Assembly of the Serene Conquered that morning. I had no military escort. I had no weapons. I had a datapad, a cup of coffee, and a set of instructions from home that I did not fully understand yet. The ambassador across from me was called Veltharix. His species, the Veyari, were tall and slender, with pale blue skin and soft golden eyes that seemed to shimmer when he felt strong emotions. Right now those eyes were troubled. He did not want to hand me this document. I could see it in the way his long fingers trembled slightly as he pushed it forward. But the Krell ambassador, seated 3 chairs down from him, was not troubled at all. The Krell looked like a cross between a reptile and a beetle, with dark scales and a wet clicking laugh that he was making no effort to hide. "The terms are final," Veltharix said softly. His voice sounded almost apologetic. "Your species must disarm completely. You must cede the 3 outer planets of your system to Krell mining operations. You must accept protectorate status under the Krell Dominion, and you must submit to what we call technological regression protocols. This means your advanced systems will be removed, for your own safety, of course." I took a slow sip of my coffee. I kept my face calm. I had been trained for this moment for 6 years, and my superiors back on Earth had been training for it for almost 3 centuries. But no training can fully prepare you for the moment when you hear your entire world being sold like a piece of furniture at an auction. "And if we refuse?" I asked. The Krell ambassador leaned forward. His wet laugh clicked in his throat. "Then in 30 of your solar days, our armada will arrive at your system. 200 warships. Your world will be pacified. You will be placed under direct occupation. Your leaders will be removed. Your people will serve." I looked at Veltharix. He would not meet my eyes. I understood something in that moment. He did not know what the Krell were really planning. He truly believed that this was a peaceful solution. He truly believed that my species was a dangerous pre-warp civilization that needed to be contained before we hurt ourselves or others. The Krell had been feeding lies to the conquered for years, and the Veyari diplomats had swallowed every word because the lies were wrapped in polite language and official reports. "I understand," I said quietly. 30 days, I will carry your message home." I stood up. I gathered my datapad. I thanked them for their time. I gave a small bow to Veltharix because he was the only one in that room who had shown me any real courtesy. Then I walked out of the Grand Assembly with my head high and my hands steady, even though my heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my teeth. As I walked down the long marble corridor toward my shuttle, I heard footsteps behind me, light and quick. I turned. It was a young Veyari aide, a female, her golden eyes wide with worry. She glanced over her shoulder, then pressed something small into my hand, a data chip. "Please," she whispered. "My ambassador does not know I am doing this, but the Krell are lying to us. I have proof. Take it to your people. Maybe you can save yourselves before it is too late." I closed my fingers around the chip. I nodded once. Then she was gone, vanishing back into the shadows of the corridor as quickly as she had come. I did not look at the chip until I was safely aboard my shuttle and the engines were humming beneath my feet. Then I plugged it into my datapad. What I saw made the blood drain from my face, and then slowly made a cold smile spread across my lips. The chip contained Krell military records. Records of 17 other civilizations they had destroyed over the past 1,000 years, all with the quiet approval of the conquered. Records of what they planned to do to Earth once they arrived. It was not pacification they wanted. It was extinction. I pressed a button on my datapad. A secure channel opened to Earth. A gruff male voice answered on the first ping. "Admiral Hayes, my superior, the commander of the United Terran Defense Command." "Report, Ambassador Bennett." "Sir," I said, and my voice was shaking now, but not from fear, from something much, much colder. "They delivered the ultimatum. 30 days, 200 warships, full invasion. There was a long pause on the other end. Then Admiral Hayes said something that changed everything. "Good, activate Operation Silent Tide. Bring our guests home." I closed my eyes. I let out a slow breath. 300 years of preparation. 300 years of quiet building, hidden shipyards in the Kuiper Belt, weapons tested in the dark between stars, a fleet assembled one rivet at a time while the galaxy watched us and saw only a primitive little world arguing with itself. 300 years of pretending to be small. That was about to end. As my shuttle broke orbit from Kethvalor Prime and I looked back at the glittering capital of the Conquered receding behind me, I whispered the words that every Terran diplomat had been trained to whisper at the end of a failed negotiation. The words were not a prayer. They were not a threat. They were a promise. We tried peace first. Remember that we tried peace first. Then I turned my face toward home, and I began to prepare the welcome our visitors would never forget. The 30 days passed quickly. On Earth, life continued as normal on the surface. Children went to school. Adults went to work. Farmers harvested crops. News channels reported on sports and weather. If any alien observer had been watching our planet during those 30 days, they would have seen a world completely at ease, unaware of the doom approaching it. But deep beneath the oceans, in hidden bases carved into the Marianas Trench, officers were running final checks on weapons systems that the galaxy had never seen. In the Kuiper Belt, far beyond the reach of Krell long-range scanners, hundreds of ships were powering up their engines for the first time in decades. And inside a quiet command center buried under a mountain in Colorado, Admiral Hayes stood before a massive holographic display of the solar system and watched 300 red dots appear at the edge of it. The Krell had arrived 3 days early. They were trying to catch us by surprise. They had no idea what surprise really meant. I was in that command center when it happened. I stood beside Admiral Hayes, still wearing my diplomatic uniform, still holding the data chip the young Vayari aide had given me. The Admiral was a tall man with silver hair and tired eyes, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet enough that you had to lean in to hear him. "All ships report in position," an officer called out. "All cloaking systems holding steady," another officer called. "Krell Armada entering attack formation," a third officer said. Admiral Hayes nodded slowly. He turned to a communications officer. "Open a channel to the Krell flagship. Audio only. Final offer." The channel opened. The wet clicking voice of a Krell commander filled the room. "Terran world. Prepare for pacification. Surrender is not an option. Resistance will be answered with." "You were warned," Admiral Hayes said simply. "You chose this." He cut the channel. He looked at me. His tired eyes were very calm. "Ambassador Bennett," he said, "would you like to give the order? You were the one they lied to after all." I looked up at the holographic display. 300 red dots surrounding my homeworld. I thought of the data chip in my pocket. I thought of the 17 civilizations the Krell had destroyed. I thought of Veltharix and his troubled golden eyes. I thought of the young aide who had risked her life to warn us. I thought of every human who had ever looked up at the stars and wondered if we were alone, and hoped that if we were not, our neighbors would be kind. Our neighbors had not been kind, but we were still going to give them one last chance to learn. "Admiral," I said quietly, "let them see us." Admiral Hayes nodded. He turned to the officer at the main console. He gave the order in a voice that was almost gentle. "Decloak the fleet." And somewhere in the cold, dark space between Earth and the Krell Armada, 300 Terran warships shimmered into existence like ghosts taking solid form, and the peace that had lasted for 30 days turned, in a single heartbeat, to panic. The Krell commander never got to finish his threat. The transmission from his flagship cut off mid-sentence as 300 Terran warships appeared out of nowhere, surrounding his entire armada from the inside, not from above, not from below, from within. Our ships had been hiding inside his own formation for the past 2 days, cloaked and silent, drifting along beside him as he thought he was sneaking up on Earth undetected. The first thing the Krell saw on their scanners was not one ship. It was not 10 ships. It was hundreds of massive warships, matte black and bristling with weapons, appearing so close to their own vessels that some of them collided trying to turn away. Alarms must have been screaming on every Krell ship in the Armada. Officers must have been shouting. Commanders must have been trying to understand what was happening. On our side, the command center was silent. We watched the main holographic display. We watched the Krell formation break apart in chaos as 300 red dots tried to figure out which way to run. Admiral Hayes folded his arms across his chest. "Open a broadcast channel," he said. "All frequencies, every Krell ship, every conquered observation post, every world that can hear us." The communications officer nodded. "Channel open, sir." Admiral Hayes took a step forward. He looked directly into the camera. His voice was steady and clear. "This is Admiral Hayes of the United Terran Defense Command. To the Krell Armada currently trespassing in Terran space. To the Serene Conquered currently observing from what you believe is a safe distance. To every species that has watched this moment unfold and done nothing, I want you to understand something." He paused. The whole room held its breath. "We have been here the entire time. We have been watching you. We have been listening to you. We know about the 17 civilizations you destroyed. We know about the lies you told the conquered. We know about your plans for our world. And we know that right now, in this moment, you are realizing for the first time that you are not the hunters. You never were." He paused again. His voice dropped lower, colder. "You have 10 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare for boarding. After that, we stop talking." The channel stayed open. 10 seconds passed in total silence. On the holographic display, the Krell ships did not power down. Instead, they turned their weapons toward the nearest Terran vessel and opened fire. Admiral Hayes let out a long, slow breath. He did not look surprised. He did not look angry. He just looked tired. "All ships," he said quietly, "you are cleared to respond." What happened next lasted exactly 11 minutes. I watched the whole thing on the holographic display. I did not say a word. Nobody in the command center said a word. We just watched as 300 red dots blinked out one by one, faster and faster, until the space around Earth was empty of everything except our own ships and a lot of quiet drifting debris. 11 minutes, 200 Krell warships, gone. The conquered observation fleet, which had been watching from what they believed was a safe distance hundreds of light years away, would have been frozen in absolute shock. They had come to watch a demonstration of Krell power. They had come to see a primitive world being pacified. They had come expecting a short and tidy lesson in galactic politics. Instead, they had watched the Krell Armada be erased in less time than it took to finish a cup of tea. Admiral Hayes turned to the communications officer again. "Open another channel, direct line to the conquered observation fleet, audio only." "Sir, they are hundreds of light years away. How did we even?" "Just open the channel, Lieutenant." The channel opened. Admiral Hayes leaned toward the microphone. His voice was calm and almost friendly now. "To the distinguished observers of the Serene Conquered, we hope you enjoyed the show. We just wanted to let you know something important. We see you. We have always seen you. Every observation post you placed, every scanner you aimed at our sun, every whisper you sent across this galaxy about us. We have been listening for 300 years. He paused. "We will be in touch soon. Please do not go anywhere." Then he cut the channel. The room stayed silent for another long moment. Then, slowly, one of the younger officers in the back of the room started laughing. It was a nervous, disbelieving kind of laugh, the kind you make when something enormous has just happened and your brain is not quite ready to process it yet. A few other officers joined in, not because anything was funny, but because the tension in the room had been so huge for so long that it had to come out somehow. Admiral Hayes turned to me. His tired eyes were a little less tired now. "Ambassador Bennett," he said, "how does it feel?" I thought about the question. I thought about the 30 days of fear I had been carrying. I thought about the data chip in my pocket. I thought about the young Vayari aide who had risked everything to warn us. "It feels," I said slowly, "like we are not finished yet." Admiral Hayes nodded. "No," he said, "we are not, but this part is over. The next part is the hard part." He was right. The battle had been the easy part. What came next was going to be much harder and much stranger and much more important. Because now the galaxy knew what we could do. Now they knew we existed. Now they knew we were not the primitive little world they had been told we were. The question was what we were going to do with that knowledge, and what we were going to demand from the civilizations that had stood by and watched the Krell plan our extinction. I looked up at the holographic display. The empty space where 200 warships had been only minutes ago. I thought about all the species the Krell had destroyed. I thought about all the species the Conquered had allowed to be destroyed. And I thought about what it would take to make sure it never happened again. Somewhere far across the galaxy, on a world called Kethvalar Prime, Ambassador Veltharix was watching the same battle on his own observation screens. His golden eyes were wide with shock. His long fingers were pressed to his mouth. He was realizing, for the first time in his long career, that everything he had believed about the universe was wrong. He was not the only one. All across the Conquered, in every capital city on every member world, diplomats and generals and politicians were watching the footage of what had just happened. Some of them were panicking. Some of them were furious. Some of them were already starting to plan retaliation. Some of them were already starting to plan surrender. And a few of them, a very few, were starting to think very carefully about what kind of civilization could hide an entire war fleet inside their own enemy's formation for 2 days without being detected. What kind of civilization could build weapons that made Krell armor look like paper? What kind of civilization could spend 300 years pretending to be primitive, while actually preparing for the worst day of its life? Those few were the ones who were going to matter in what came next, because they were the ones who understood, finally, that humanity was not a threat to be contained. Humanity was a question to be answered. And the question was this: what does a species do when it spends 300 years getting ready for a war, builds the weapons to win that war, hides in the shadows until the exact right moment to strike, and then, after winning, does not demand tribute, does not take territory, does not even ask for an apology? What does such a species want? That was the question that would keep the Conquered awake for the next 10 years. And the answer, when it finally came, would change the galaxy forever. The day after the battle, I was standing in the command center reviewing damage reports when the first transmission came in from the Conquered. It was not from the Krell. The Krell had gone completely silent and would remain so for months. It was from Ambassador Veltharix himself. He was requesting permission to come to Earth, alone, unarmed, as what he called a witness. Admiral Hayes read the transmission twice. Then he looked at me. "Bennett," he said, "you know him better than anyone. What do you think?" I thought about the troubled golden eyes. I thought about the way his long fingers had trembled when he slid the ultimatum across the table. I thought about the young Vayari aide who had given me the data chip. "I think," I said carefully, "that he already knows the truth, and I think he needs someone to help him figure out what to do with it." Admiral Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Approve his request. Bring him here. But Bennett, listen to me carefully. He is not a friend yet. He is a possibility. Treat him like one." 3 days later, Ambassador Veltharix landed on Earth. He stepped off his shuttle into a world he had never expected to see. The sky was blue. The air was warm. A gentle breeze was blowing across the landing pad. Human technicians in orange vests were moving around the shuttle with practiced efficiency, checking readings and adjusting equipment. Children somewhere in the distance were laughing. Veltharix stood at the bottom of the shuttle ramp and just stared. His pale blue skin had gone almost white. His golden eyes were wet with emotion. He looked like a man who had just walked into a room and discovered that everything he had ever been told about that room was a lie. I walked out to meet him. I did not bow. I did not salute. I just offered him my hand the way humans greet each other. He looked at my hand for a long moment. Then very slowly he took it. His long fingers wrapped around mine. His skin was cool and smooth. "Ambassador Bennett," he said quietly, "I have come to apologize on behalf of my species, on behalf of the conquered, on behalf of everyone who should have known better and did not." "I know," I said. "Come inside, we have a lot to talk about." I led him into the command building. I walked him past rows of human soldiers who stood at attention as we passed. I could feel their eyes on him. I could feel his nervousness. But I could also feel something else. Something like hope. Something like the first small crack in a very old wall. We sat down in a small conference room. I poured him a cup of water. He took it with shaking hands. "Why did you let me come?" he asked. "You could have refused. You could have punished my entire species for what we allowed to happen. Why did you let me come?" I thought about the question for a long time before I answered. "Because," I said finally, "we know what it is like to be lied to. We know what it is like to believe something that turns out to be false. We know what it is like to wake up one day and realize that the version of history you were taught was not the real version. Humans have been through that, more times than we can count, and we have learned something important from it." "What?" he asked quietly. "That the people who wake up," I said, "are worth saving. The people who do not wake up are a different problem. But the people who wake up, who ask questions, who are willing to look at the truth even when it hurts, those people are the reason civilizations get better. And you, Ambassador Veltharix, are waking up." He was quiet for a long time. Then he set down his cup of water. He folded his long fingers on the table. He looked up at me with those wet golden eyes. "Tell me what you need me to do," he said. "Tell me how to help you fix this. Tell me how to help you save my own people from themselves, because I am not going back to Kethvalor Prime as the diplomat I was. I cannot be that person anymore. I want to be someone better. I just do not know how." I smiled at him. It was a small smile, but it was real. "Welcome to being human," I said. "That is exactly how it starts." Over the next several weeks, Ambassador Veltharix and I worked together almost every day. He was a fast learner. He absorbed information like a sponge, and he was not afraid to ask difficult questions. He wanted to understand everything. How humans had managed to hide our technology for so long, how we had built our fleet in secret, how we had managed to stay unified as a species during the 3 centuries of preparation, when most civilizations in the galaxy would have torn themselves apart under that kind of pressure. The answer to the last question surprised him the most. "We did tear ourselves apart," I told him one afternoon as we walked together along the edge of a quiet lake in the mountains. "Many times. Humans fought humans for most of our history. We had wars and plagues and famines and 100 other disasters, and every single one of them taught us something. We learned that we could not afford to stay divided forever. We learned that if we did not figure out how to stand together, something out in the universe would come along and solve the problem for us. Permanently." "So you chose unity," he said quietly. "We chose survival," I corrected. "Unity was just the price of survival. It was not a gift. It was a bill we paid." He was quiet for a while. Then he said something I did not expect. "The conquered has never paid that bill. We have always been told we were united, but we were not. We were just comfortable, and comfort is not the same as unity." "No," I agreed, "it is not." The weeks turned into months. Veltharix made quiet contact with other Vayari diplomats who had been watching events from Kethvalor Prime. Some of them responded with fear. Some responded with anger, but a few responded with something else: curiosity, a willingness to question, a hunger to understand what had really been happening in the conquered for the past 1,000 years. Those few became the first members of what would later be called the Reform Movement. It was a small group at first, just a handful of diplomats across 3 or 4 species. But it grew, slowly at first, and then faster as more and more members of the Conquered began to realize that the universe they had been living in was not the universe they had been told existed. Meanwhile, humanity did something that nobody in the galaxy expected. We did not invade. We did not conquer. We did not demand tribute. We just waited. We held our position. We let the conquered come to us. Admiral Hayes explained it to me one evening as we stood together on a balcony overlooking the ocean. The worst thing we could do right now, he said, is act like them. If we go out there and start giving orders, we become the next Krell. We become the next empire. And then someday, some other species will have to do to us what we just did to them. That is not what we fought for. So what did we fight for? I asked. He looked out at the ocean for a long time. The sun was setting. The water was turning gold and pink and orange. Seabirds were calling somewhere in the distance. We fought, he said quietly, so that we could keep watching sunsets, so that we could keep hearing birds, so that kids could grow up without being told they belonged to somebody else. We did not fight to rule anyone. We fought to be left alone. And now that we have earned the right to be left alone, we are going to use that right to help other people earn it too, on their own terms, at their own pace. 10 years passed. The galaxy changed more in those 10 years than it had in the previous 1,000. The Conquered slowly reformed itself, driven by the reform movement and the constant quiet pressure of humanity's presence. 17 civilizations, long thought to have been destroyed by the Krell, were rediscovered in hidden refuges and brought back into contact with the wider galaxy. Their descendants, who had been hiding for generations, finally stepped back into the sunlight. The Krell themselves remained under quarantine, not attacked, not punished, just isolated. They were given a choice. They could continue being what they had always been, alone in their own corner of the galaxy, cut off from trade and communication. Or they could reform themselves, face what they had done, and slowly earn the right to rejoin the wider community. Some of them chose to reform. Most of them did not. But the choice was theirs. And humanity, for our part, kept building. The Perseverance still patrolled. Our shipyard still ran day and night. We did not stop preparing, because we had learned the hard way that peace was not something you won and then kept forever. Peace was a garden. If you stopped tending it, something else grew in its place. Ambassador Veltharix became the first non-human to hold a permanent office on Earth. He lived in a small apartment overlooking the same lake where we had walked together in those first difficult weeks. He came to love our strange little world. The blue skis, the laughing children, the loud, messy, joyful chaos of human life. One evening, near the 10th anniversary of the battle that had changed everything, he and I stood together on a beach watching the sun set over the ocean. A young human child walked past us. She had dark hair and bright brown eyes, and she was carrying a seashell. She stopped when she saw Veltharix. She stared up at him with open curiosity. She was not afraid. She had grown up in a world where aliens walked the earth, and to her, it was as normal as seeing a bird or a car. "Hi," she said, "what are you?" Veltharix crouched down so he was at her eye level. His long blue fingers folded gracefully in front of him. "I am a Vayari," he said gently. "My name is Veltharix. What is your name?" "Maya," she said. She held up the seashell. "Look what I found." Veltharix took the seashell carefully. He examined it with the seriousness of a scientist studying a new discovery. Then he handed it back to her with great care. "It is beautiful," he said. "Thank you for showing me." "You are welcome," she said. Then she ran off down the beach, her bare feet leaving small prints in the wet sand. Veltharix stood up slowly. He watched her go. His golden eyes were wet again, but not with sadness this time. "I used to think," he said quietly, "that humanity was dangerous because you had terrible weapons. I used to think you were dangerous because you could hide an entire fleet inside an enemy formation. I used to think you were dangerous because of what you could destroy." He paused. He turned to look at me. "Now I understand. You are not dangerous because of what you can destroy. You are dangerous because of what you protect. That little girl, her seashell, this sunset. Your world is full of small things that you love, and you have spent your entire history learning how to defend those small things from anyone who would take them away. I smiled. The sun was almost gone now. The first stars were appearing in the sky. Yes, I said, that is exactly right. I have a question, he said. Ask it. The Conquered asked, many years ago, why your species did not simply conquer us. Admiral Hayes gave an answer that has been quoted across the galaxy ever since, but I think there was a deeper answer that he never spoke out loud. I think I finally understand what it was. May I tell you what I think it was? Please, I said. Veltharix looked out at the darkening ocean. His voice was soft. I think your species did not conquer us because you understood something we did not. You understood that the moment you started ruling other people, you would stop being able to protect the small things you loved. You would become something else. Something that could not walk on a beach with a child and admire a seashell. You would become us. And you refused to become us, even when you could have, even when it would have been easier. You refused. I did not answer right away. I just watched the stars appear, one by one. You understand us better than most humans do, I said finally. I have had a good teacher, he replied. We stood there in silence for a long time. The tide came in. The stars brightened. Somewhere behind us, Maya was laughing with her parents. And I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The ultimatum on Kethvalor Prime, the data chip in my pocket, the 30 days of waiting, the 11 minutes of the battle, the 10 years of careful, patient, quiet work that had followed. Peace had turned to panic on a single day when the Terran Warships Decloaked and the galaxy learned that humanity was not what it had been told we were. But panic, in time, had turned back into peace. A different kind of peace. A stronger kind. A peace that had been tested and forged and earned. The kind of peace that was worth tending, like a garden, for as long as we lived. The kind of peace that was worth protecting. Because in the end, that was what humanity had always been about. Not conquest, not glory, not power, just this. A beach, a sunset, a child with a seashell, the small, precious, fragile things that make a life worth living. And the quiet, steady, unbreakable will to defend them. Forever,